What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. And joining me today, Chris, Fedor, cleveland.com, Cavs beat reporter, and Jimmy Watkins, cleveland.com columnist. And we're here after one of the most anticipated games of the year. The Cleveland Cavaliers versus the Boston Celtics, their final matchup of the regular season. And the Boston Celtics walked out of Rocket Arena with a 109-98 victory. Chris, Jimmy, Jayson Tatum returned to Rocket Arena and was paired up with Jaylen Brown and went to work. Let's start there. What was your guys' takeaway from seeing this matchup and how the Cavs matched up with them on the defensive end of the floor to go up against one of the most potent duos in the NBA?
You guys know me. I don't like to overreact to games or single outcomes, especially in March. But my big takeaway is Boston's better. They've been better all year, and now they have Jayson Tatum. They look like champions. They play like champions. They act like champions. They don't get rattled. That was not a close game in any way. You look at the final score, and it was 11, and the Cavs made it a little bit competitive down the stretch. In the second half of that game, it was not within 8 at any point. That was dominance by Boston. And Jayson Tatum still isn't the Jayson Tatum that he's probably going to be by the time the playoffs roll around. So to me, the big takeaway is, yes, Boston is a bad matchup for the Cavs, just like Kenny Atkinson admitted going into the game. He said it twice. He said it Saturday, then he reiterated it hours before tip-off. But that's, to me, just a way of not wanting to say what is actually the truth, which is Boston's better. And I don't know how anybody could pick the Cavs to win a 7-game series against the Celtics. I think the Cavs have more vulnerabilities. I think some of the weaknesses that the Cavs have shown throughout the course of this season, Boston can exploit those because those are Boston's strengths. We talk about the three-point shooting defense. Well, Boston's one of the best three-point shooting teams in the league. We talk about the Cavs' rebounding woes. Well, guess what? Boston's one of the best rebounding teams in the league. We talk about the up and down nature of the Cavs' production off the bench. Well, guess what? They've got the reigning sixth man of the year on the other side. So a lot of the areas where the Cavs just haven't been good or are perceived weaknesses, those are strengths of the Celtics. So if there's a team that the Cavs would benefit from avoiding in the NBA playoffs before potentially getting to the NBA Finals, it's the Celtics, because I don't know how else you could say it other than Boston's better.
Bad matchup is kind of like bad test taker for me. It's like, oh, you're not going to, this is the old Daniel Tosh quote about like, oh, the part where we find out what you know, that's the part you struggle with. People ask you questions off a flashcard, you crush it, but then you put pencil to paper and blank. That's what bad matchup means to me, particularly in this case. It's a little bit different when, like, I don't know, Pacers Cavs last year. That was a bad matchup stylistically. And that's a little bit of a different case, but because I thought then that the Cavs had more talent than the Pacers. But the way that both of those teams liked to play, certain specific weaknesses of the Cavs lined up directly with the biggest strengths of the Pacers. The Celtics are just a complete team, and the Cavs still have some holes. That's where this is a quote unquote bad matchup. Like, you just look at some of the boxes you have to check to be a major playoff contender in the modern NBA. Offensive rebounding is a big time trend. And actually the Cavs, I thought, on the defensive glass held up okay today. But like, that's one of the areas you can circle where Boston's number 2 in offensive rebound rate this season. The Cavs are in the 20s again in defensive rebounding rate. Offensive rebounding is back in the NBA. It's, more and more teams are going into that. And what happens with league trends in the playoffs, they get exacerbated a lot of times. Like, you think teams are crashing more trying to win possessions in the regular season. Well, in the playoffs, where the possession game and all that math matters a whole lot more, like, get ready, because Joe Mazzulla is going to have a detailed game plan for how to attack the Cavs on the glass if these two teams meet each other in playoffs. 3-point defense, I mean, is that a matchup thing? That's a pretty broad category to struggle in. We're not talking about like specific roster spots. That's just like probably the most important. Rim defense and 3-point defense are like the two most important indicators of your defense. And with every new roster addition, the Cavs continue to test the limits of how far can we stretch our defense and have it still be good just by having Evan Mobley back there? And the Celtics are uniquely built to stretch that defense even farther. Ironically, they will be even better built the next time the Cavs see them, if the Cavs see them again, because Nikola Vucevic didn't even play today, and he's the kind of guy who can take Evan Mobley and or Jared Allen, who also didn't play today and whose absence was definitely felt. Thomas Bryant was bad today, and then when the Cavs decided to go away from him, they were, running Dean Wade out at the 5, and that was problematic for different reasons, right? They definitely missed Jared Allen today. Max Strus brings an energy level, and you even saw it on the bench today. Ethan posted a video on Twitter of Max getting after guys in the huddle, but he brings an energy level that can potentially help against Boston. But like the Celtics have a lot more meat on their bones too. Like obviously, the Jayson Tatum situation is watching him in the first, 6 minutes of this game today. I was just like recalibrating everything I believed about like the hierarchy of the Eastern Conference and potentially the NBA, because like he really found a rhythm. It really looked like borderline vintage Jayson Tatum. In certain moments, he had multiple times. He had once in the first quarter, once in the fourth quarter, where he went right at Evan Mobley under the rim and found success. The second time, it was just a straight up switch. Like they wouldn't have in the fourth quarter of a playoff game. Celtics ran on a pick and roll for Jayson Tatum. Evan Mobley switched on him, and Jayson Tatum crossed him right over and finished a really tough righty finger roll over Evan's outstretched arm like it was nothing. It's his second game back, and he looks better and better faster than I anticipated at this stage. So you take how good Boston has been so far with how much the theoretical ceiling with what Tatum could be, and it's kind of scary to think about.
And I did not get that sense from the Cleveland Cavaliers locker room tonight. It wasn't like they thought that they were out of this fight, especially going into a potential 7-game series in an Eastern Conference Finals matchup in the postseason. James Harden talked about being kind of in this same category as the Boston Celtics. Evan Mobley kind of reiterated that statement as well.
They can't say otherwise, though. That's the thing. They can't say otherwise, though, because they've spent the last 3 weeks talking about how much more equipped they are to win a championship and how much more they believe in this particular roster. And if they were to reverse course just based on one bad loss against the Boston Celtics, that would show a level of fragility that they obviously don't want people to pick up on.
Sure, but we also can admit this is a make or miss league. And especially if the Cavs are going to shoot as poorly as they did today, not only from three-point range, but from the field. The Cavs ended tonight's game 13 of 45 from deep, which is 28.9%, and 40.7% from the field on 86 field goal attempts. Then your energy can also not dwindle throughout the game. There were multiple times, especially in the second half, where it felt like deja vu. Donovan Mitchell trying to inject intensity and energy into the arena, into his group, into his players, an area that we thought that the Cavs had moved on from. We thought at the beginning of the season, it wasn't necessarily, they're playing bad. It was how they were playing. We were focused on the process. And now we're back to this conversation of Kenny Atkinson saying that the energy was bad in the first half. Donovan Mitchell admitting, trying to get the energy higher in the second half. How important is that and the potential lack thereof of if the Cavs aren't shooting well, that they're going to be in their own heads, especially against a team like Boston or a team like the Detroit Pistons? Obviously, the Cavs have found success against the Pistons this season as well, but I think the internal confidence the internal belief has been at a sky high, especially after the James Harden trade, the acquisition of Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis. And yet, in one of the biggest games of the season, the energy was the main issue if the Cavs are going to say that it was just an off night shooting-wise.
I just don't know that I look at today's game and say it was Cavs specific. I mean, I feel like it's just when they play against Boston, there's a level of pressure that they feel against that team. There's a level of pressure that they deal with against that team. There's a different kind of margin for error that they have against that caliber opponent. And I think it all leads to what we ultimately end up seeing. I think the Cavs know that if they're going to beat Boston, if they're going to be competitive against Boston, they need their offense to be better, certainly, than what it was today. They need to make more threes, the open ones that they get against the Celtics. But I think there are more pressure on those shots because of the caliber of opponent that they're playing against. And I feel like there is a little bit of a mental thing there. I think it's the same thing when you play against the Oklahoma City Thunder. When you're against an opponent that you feel like, one, can exploit your weaknesses, and two, can beat you if you don't bring it to that level, it's a different thing than the Cavs feeling like they can come from behind against the Pistons. And if this was just, and Kenny Atkinson kind of said it after the game as well, if this was just a one-time thing, you just say, all right, it's a blip. Okay, it's an anomaly. The Cavs just didn't make shots, or the Cavs didn't do this, or the Cavs were missing this, or the Cavs were missing that, or the Cavs didn't do this. But it feels like today's game was every game against the Celtics, right? Like, against the Celtics, they lose the bench scoring. Against the Celtics, they lose the rebounding. Against the Celtics, their offense turns more stagnant. Against the Celtics, oftentimes they get caught playing the Celtics game. Against the Celtics, all of the same things continue to happen for this team. Most of the times against the Celtics, they're down 20 before you can blink. It's followed the same thing over and over and over again. So at some point, you have to say to yourself, well, it's not really a Cavs-specific thing. Yeah, there are elements that are Cavsy to it. There are things that they didn't do well that they can probably do better moving forward. But at some point, they have to show that they can do those things better moving forward against this team, against this group of champions, against this opponent where the margin for error is a lot smaller than what it is against the Toronto Raptors or the Detroit Pistons or the Miami Heat or one of those kinds of teams. So yeah, I mean, we've talked about it throughout the course of the year. They can't allow the offensive struggles and the missed shots to carry over on the defensive end of the floor. But I think there is an element of human nature to that. And I think there is a mental thing of playing against the Celtics that there's just more pressure that you feel. They apply a different kind of pressure to this team, and they haven't figured out how to best deal with that.
And the pressure is born from the Cavs. Nope, this is the measuring stick.
Yes.
This is the team they're still gunning for. James Harden said it after the game. Like, that's what it looks like right there. That's where we need to get to. And he's, of course, I mean, I feel like we could take James Harden's audio and Donovan Mitchell's audio from last year or the year before, and they would all say, yeah, I'm sure we'll get there. Like, don't worry about it. Tonight's not indicative of anything. And the Celtics were saying the same thing. Oh, yeah, it's just regular season game. Jaylen Brown even allowed, like, yeah, in the second quarter, like, they were missing some good looks, which is true. Like, the Cavs, objectively, some of these were, guys are standing wide open. They missed threes that they would otherwise make in other situations. This is not other situations. It's not most situations. This is a very specific situation against a very specific team that the Cavs consistently have these problems against. And I think that part of the reason why is that the Celtics defend in a way, I asked Kenny about this after the game, that makes it hard to run this ball has energy is contagious type of offense. They switch a lot. They play drop instead of playing to the level with James Harden. They don't feel like they need to send two at the ball as often as other teams do with James Harden. So you got to work a lot harder to get the good looks. Like, the Celtics are a very good simulator of what elite playoff level defense looks like, not just because they have the personnel, but because of the style. Like, you got to win your matchup. This is part of the reason. I'm not going to dwell on this because I think there was more going on today with the Cavs offense than just this. But going forward, like, James Harden is one of the best isolation players of all time. And that skill is going to be crucial in a playoff series against the Boston Celtics, who are very, very lenient with their switching. Sam Hauser was matched up with Donovan Mitchell semi-frequently today. They're okay relinquishing that matchup. They're going to live with that because they know that even if Donovan scores, there's an invisible cost to that basket because he has to drive to the basket and fend off all the help that they might potentially send off him. And Sam Hauser also just, like, he's a big guy. It takes a lot to get around and above him, right? So anytime that they can, even if it's, ends up being an easy bucket, Donovan Mitchell gets past him to the rim for a layup, they know that can that mileage can show up later on when Donovan has a different switch and maybe a different defender against him, right? So that makes it harder for guys who, even if they're standing wide open and the ball swung over to them, if they haven't touched the ball in a while, that shot is harder, let alone the pressure that Chris was talking about. Ball's a little heavier maybe when you're playing against Boston and you're on national television. And you want to throw the 1 o'clock start in there. Guys' body clocks are off a little bit. They're used to peaking at 7, 8, 9 o'clock. Today they're playing at 1 o'clock. Okay, sure, fine. The Celtics were ready. They played a late night game 2 days ago. The Cavs had 4 days off. I mean, maybe that makes it harder to get rid of the medal, but that to me kind of mitigates the whole, they're so used to playing routine oriented. Their bodies peak at a certain time. That makes a little bit less sense to me when you've had 4 days to prepare for this specific window. So I'm with Chris. I think this is a lot of the things the Cavs struggle with against the Celtics are a lot of things that a lot of other teams struggle with against the Celtics because the Celtics are really good at doing what they do.
This is one of those games where we've continuously seen the Cavs have a bad quarter. One bad quarter that can shift the game, shift the momentum in a different kind of way. Obviously, that was the second quarter for the Cleveland Cavaliers today against the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics only scored 21 points in this second quarter. They were 1 of 9 from 3. They were 5 of 20 from the field, 25%. And still, they were a plus 11 in the period. The Cleveland Cavaliers were just 4 of 25, 16% from the field, and 0 of 14 from three-point range in that second quarter. That's the difference. They lost by 11 points. They were plus 11 in the second quarter. And I feel like we always talk about how the offense is becoming more and more pivotal for this Cavs team, right? And even when they were struggling in this period, the Cavs defense was the standard. They were holding the Boston Celtics, who had a chance to balloon their lead exponentially in the period to just 21 points. If there's a positive to take away from tonight's game, without Jared Allen, I thought it was how the Cavs defense held up in portions. Because sure, Jaylen Brown, Peyton Pritchard, Jayson Tatum all made difficult shots, but they had to make those difficult shots for it to be a game for them. With Jalen Tyson playing through a neck strain, with Dean Wade returning from an ankle injury, with Donovan Mitchell coming back from a groin strain, with James Harden and Keon Ellis playing through finger fractures. What did you guys make of that end of the floor for the Cavs in today's matchup?
I thought there were some positives for sure defensively. I thought they made Jaylen Brown work hard for a lot of his shots, a lot of his offense. They made him see extra bodies. They made him shoot over the top of defenders, hit some difficult mid-rangers, had a couple of turnovers that were untimely, looked frustrated at various points of the game. So I thought that was a positive from the Cavs' perspective. I didn't feel like there were too many matchups where you looked at it and said, oh man, that is just untenable for the Cavs. In past series against the Celtics or regular season matchups, they would hunt Darius Garland. They would get him down low. First, they would call for a screen. Then whoever was the screen setter, Darius would take that guy. Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, and whoever that guy was would just take Darius down into the post, near the basket, and he would shoot over the top. Sam Merrill held up at times against Jaylen Brown. He fought through screens. He didn't allow him to get to his spots. And the same thing when it came to whoever it was that was guarding Jayson Tatum. Now, this version of Jayson Tatum is still very different. This was his second game back coming from a ruptured Achilles. So there's a lot of things that he's still working through, shaking off rust, getting his lift, his zap, all of that kind of stuff. But I didn't look at today's game and say, like, oh my God, there are so many problematic matchups for the Cavs when it comes to them trying to defend the Celtics. I do think that the Celtics got them in scramble mode a lot. I think the Celtics being able to beat guys off the dribble and cause help and rotations and stuff like that led to open threes for Baylor Shireman and Sam Hauser, and that's something that the Cavs really have to focus on. I think it does start at the point of attack. but I thought Dennis Schroeder brought energy and activity and bothered the Celtics at points in the second half in terms of getting into the flow of their offense and establishing their offensive possession around like 13 on the shot clock as opposed to 18 on the shot clock because of his hounding pressure and whatnot. So I do think that the Cavs personnel held up reasonably well against everything that the Celtics threw against them. I do wonder about the size, the general size of the Cavs at the 3-4 spot versus Boston's length and athleticism. Kenny was trying. He was trying Keon Ellis at the 4. He was trying Dean Wade at the 5. He was trying, I guess, James Harden at the 4 at times. Can you consider him a 4? Craig Porter Jr., who was the 4 in that lineup at the beginning-ish of the second quarter? I don't know. But, like, he's trying to find the right combinations in the right lineups. It's just that seems to be a glaring weak point for this roster that they're going to have to work through. I think part of the reason why he didn't want to start Jalen Tyson with Dean Wade is because Jalen Tyson is technically the backup power forward and Dean Wade's the starting power forward. In this version of the Cavs without Jared Allen available. So I do think that there are some general size questions that I have in this particular series, and how some of these guys can potentially hold up over 7 games if this becomes a matchup down the road. But I don't think it was as easy as it's been in the past for some of Boston's individual players to hunt and seek out the matchup that they desired the most.
Yeah, Harden started the game on Tatum, which I thought was interesting for a couple of reasons. And I don't know that you want to do that for long stretches, but I am interested in this idea that could the Cavs play like a little bit of a mind game with the Celtics if we got back to playoff time? Obviously, it depends on like how Jayson Tatum progresses and how the Celtics find their rhythm. But this idea, it's a silly idea. This idea that is it Jaylen Brown's team or is it Jayson Tatum's team? It's a dumb like first takey type thing. But you can mess with that a little bit. Like if Jayson Tatum sees James Harden in front of him, he's going to want to go. He's going to want to attack that matchup. The Celtics are very matchup oriented in their offense. And like you can potentially knock the Celtics out of their rhythm a little bit by doing that. That's kind of what Boston does to other teams. Is like, hey, we're gonna give you some of these ISO matchups that you like, and you might get us on a couple of these. We were talking about with Donovan earlier. You might get us on that Donovan Mitchell, Sam Hauser switch a couple of times. But what do you lose? Like, what are you losing while you're doing that? Like Donovan's great. Donovan's getting his, but now everyone else is watching him, and that's a tough style of basketball to sustain. James also had a couple of nice box outs when the Cavs went super-duper small at the end of the game, and they needed someone to keep Kate off the glass. Just a random observation there. But yeah, the size is real. And anytime that the Cavs had neither of Dean Wade or Jalen Tyson on the court, I was extremely nervous. And anytime that the Boston had both of Tatum and Brown on the court and the Cavs only had one of Wade or Tyson out there, I felt the same. Like Keon Ellis, we may come to the point in the playoffs. It's one game sample size. But we may come to the point in the playoff series where it's just like, not this one. Like Keon Ellis is an excellent defensive weapon in many contexts. And that doesn't mean he can't get any minutes. He can disrupt Peyton Pritchard or Derek White or something like that. But I mean, given where the Cavs' positional needs are, they need him to be a wing defender. And against guys who are that big, I saw a few too many moments today where I felt like he was a little bit overwhelmed. One of the key warning signs of that sort of thing is like when a dude is just getting absolutely bullied off his spot and he gets called for a foul and he can't believe that you called him for a foul because like, dude, I'm taking a beating out here and the foul is on me. It's like, yeah, actually you're out of position and overmatched a little bit, but like, sorry, whistles. It's a fair whistle. And to that point, I agree that Sam Merrill held up okay today, but I also wonder if there's a correlation between Sam Merrill shooting 1 for 7 from 3 and Sam Merrill having to eat Jaylen Brown's shoulder into his chest like 3 times a possession. Like that takes a lot of energy out of you, man. And the Cavs ask a lot of Sam Merrill running around on defense And the Celtics don't give you the same size shooting windows. Like Sam's got to get that thing off quick. So there's a lot going on with his mind in that moment, getting his mechanics straight and all that stuff. And his body is beleaguered by the time he gets, he does that. Okay, he does it once, fine. He does that 3-4 times down the court. Like that's again, that's that invisible cost that you don't necessarily see that show up. But I do wonder always if there's a correlation there when a guy and again, he did a great job competing tonight, but there's always a flip side to that sort of thing.
We always joke about the amount of times that Sam Merrill's on the floor, like during each game, because of whether or not he's taking a charge, whether or not he's setting a screen and the guy powers through it and puts him on his butt. I legitimately, if the Cavs are able to get as far as playing the Boston Celtics in a 7-game playoff series, I might have to hold a tally for the amount of times that he is on the ground in that series and what it means for him, right? Because we talked about it, and Jimmy, I think you're absolutely right. The lineups are going to be extremely valuable in figuring out how to manipulate them. There were multiple times tonight where Joe Mazzulla went to a lineup that did not have Jayson Tatum nor Jaylen Brown on the floor, and the Cavs still could not win those minutes. Derek White, who Kenny Atkinson was revering as a top 5 player in the NBA today, was leading that unit, and they were getting the job done. Whether or not, again, that had to do with the Cavs simply missing open shots or the Boston Celtics simply having a speed, more mindset on the floor and with those guys out there, it can change the pace of the game. It can change how the Cavs actually have some kind of lineups that do that as well, with Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis and how they like to run the floor as well. So I'm going to be curious, especially when it comes to the starting lineup, as we were mentioning, in a 7-game series in this situation, and how the Cavs are going to utilize them and what that means for Sam Merrill and the toll that it's going to take on his body to not only have to defend, but also make shots, because that is kind of the biggest portion that the Cavs need from him on any given night. And again, 1-game sample size, but both Jalen Tyson and Sam Merrill are 2 of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA this season, and they both struggled from beyond the arc tonight. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that maybe continues, especially as the physicality ramps up. And again, they would have to get past 2 series just to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. What do you guys think is the main area of focus for the Cavs to potentially switch this series around and get a win in 7 games against the Boston Celtics? Or is it just out of hand for the Cleveland Cavaliers at this point with this iteration against this version of the Celtics?
I do think the Cavs would benefit from Max Strus in this particular series against Boston. And it doesn't mean that he has to play 30 to 35 minutes a night, and that's not going to be Max Strus's role. But the value of Max is that if Jalen Tyson just doesn't have it, or if he looks a little bit overmatched, then you could go to Max. If Keon Ellis, if he's a little bit too frail, if he's getting pushed around, if he's getting moved off his spots, if he's in foul trouble, it just gives you another guy that you can go to. So I think Max's role when the Cavs get into the playoffs, I don't know that it's going to be consistent. I don't think it's going to be what it's been in the past. But it's insurance. It's in case certain things are not going well, then I can just call on that guy. And I think Kenny has shown that he is willing at times, that if it's not going well, to reverse course. Now, some people may say that it takes him a little bit too long to figure that out. Maybe that gets sped up when you're talking about a playoff environment. But if Keon Ellis can't match up against the Celtics, Max maybe can a little bit better. If Jalen Tyson can't match up against the Celtics, Max maybe can a little bit better. And then the next series becomes the next guys or something along those lines. But aside from that, I mean, I think the number one thing that the Cavs have to do is make Boston at some point look uncomfortable against them. It's always the Cavs that feel like they're on their heels, or they're not fighting for their spots enough, or they're not winning certain areas that Kenny Atkinson pointed out before the game or leading into the game. And it's just, when you watch the Cavs play against the Celtics, you feel a level of discomfort from them. You could say that they lose their identity a little bit. Remember the last time that happened, or it looked like that, or it felt like that? It was against the Pacers. So it just feels like Boston can do the things that they do well, and they feel like they can do those at a high level against this version of the Cavs, against a previous version of the Cavs, against a Cavs team from 2 years ago. And at some point, the Cavs just have to show that they can make the Celtics feel a little bit uncomfortable. Even in the fourth quarter, when the Cavs were making their run and the arena was into it, and Donovan Mitchell was making threes and celebrating and trying to get everybody enthusiastic again inside the arena, including his teammates, when he was playing with emotion and stuff like that, the Celtics looked completely unfazed. They're like, all right, we're just going to go back down the other end. We're going to move the ball. We're going to put the hands in the ball of Jaylen Brown. He's going to make a good decision. Maybe Derek White, he's going to make a good decision. Jayson Tatum, open three. Peyton Pritchard, open three. Whatever the case may be. And I just have never gotten the sense in 3 regular season meetings between the two teams this year, including today, which was supposed to be a more informative one, that the Cavs have been able to play like the Cavs. And that's a problem to me. And I do think that there are stylistic things about the Celtics that bother the Cavs. I think there are mental things about playing the Celtics that bother the Cavs. I also think that the Celtics are a bad matchup for the Cavs, and I think the Celtics are better. And when you're playing against a team that's better, the margin for error is so small, and you have to win like in all these little areas where the Cavs just haven't shown yet that they can consistently win in. So that would be my focus is, try not to go away from the things that make you who you are offensively. Try not to get caught up in the Celtics. And it's easier said than done. It's very easy for me to sit here and say it, but that's what it seems like when you watch these two teams play. One team is incredibly comfortable and unfazed, and the other one is on their heels almost the entire game. It's been 3 games against the Celtics, and the Cavs have been down by at least 20 in all 3 of them. That shouldn't be the case, you would think, with the level of talent that the Cavs have, with the level of chemistry that the Cavs have, with the level of depth that the Cavs are perceived to have, but it has been the case. And it tells me that the Cavs are pretty uncomfortable against this particular team.
Here's a 3-game Cavs Celtics 2025-26 trend that I think the Cavs should be comfortable with and should get more comfortable with potentially this postseason. Evan Mobley entering today against the Celtics was averaging like 24, 12, and 4. Today you went for 24 and 9. And I thought there were more opportunities, as we always do. I thought there were more opportunities to give him the ball. And if you put Jared Allen out there, particularly, it's March now, but Black History Month Jared Allen, if we can get that guy in the playoffs, playing next to James Harden, playing against Nikola Vucevic and Enes Kanter, that could be a pressure point. Like, 2 things can be true here. The Celtics have done an excellent job filling in along the margins in their front court, which was a massive question mark for them at the beginning of the season. It was the biggest reason people didn't believe in them, because who are these guys that are playing, that are securing the paint and protecting the glass for these guys? Are these even NBA level players? They've answered pretty strongly yes in the affirmative. They've got some with Kanter. Vucevic is a nice ad. Even Luka Garza, who was kind of like a fringe, is he even going to be in the league guy, has become a nice little stretch 5 change of pace guy for them. But it's still a different equate. Evan Mobley and Jared Allen on their best days are 2 of the best 10, 15 players at their position in the league, right? And the big bugaboo for Evan Mobley against the Celtics the last couple of years was Kristaps Porzingis. Kristaps Porzingis gave Evan Mobley all kinds of problems in those matchups over the last 2 years. So when it was Evan Mobley takes the leap or bust, you just point at Kristaps Porzingis over there and say, well, that's a big problem for you. Ironically, in a season where the Cavs made a franchise-altering trade, in part because they weren't sure that Evan Mobley leap was going to come this year, it's still pretty darn important against the Celtics, because you look across the positional matchup board, and that is the one for me. I mean, obviously Derek White, top 5. No disrespect to top 5 player Derek White, top 5 NBA player Derek White. he's not Donovan Mitchell or James Harden. Defensively, though, he can hang with those guys. Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown are excellent answers to Harden or whoever else is going to be attacking from the perimeter. Inside, Jared Allen and Evan Mobley should have a pretty strong advantage with their skill and with the guys that they have to set them up. Like that could be a pressure point. That could be where the Celtics bargain bin shopping at the trade deadline, or they're ducking under the luxury tax. They're posturing for a gap year at the beginning of the season. And don't let anyone tell you anything different. The Celtics were ready for a gap year this year. They traded two of their most important players before the season. And the Anthony Simons trade was as much about getting under the luxury tax as it was they like Nikola Vucevic. I'm sure they do like Nikola Vucevic. He's a nice player. But this run surprised them too. And that's where I think potentially you could poke him.
And the beauty of all this, guys, we'll be talking about this team again in less than 24 hours as the Cavs are on the second night of a back-to-back at Rocket Arena against the Philadelphia 76ers. And this is going to be interesting because I think that the injury report for the Cavs could be just as long as it is for the Philadelphia 76ers. The 76ers are going to be without Tyrese Maxey with a right finger sprain, Joel Embiid with a right oblique strain, and Paul George due to league suspension. VJ Edgecombe is also questionable, so it's going to be interesting to see how the Cavs look at their own roster and all the injuries that we talked about on this podcast and seeing whether or not that Donovan Mitchell is going to play back-to-back after his first night back from a groin strain that held him out for multiple games. Dean Wade, ankle sprain that he just returned from. Evan Mobley, calf strain that he's been dealing with throughout this season. I'll be interested to see who is and who isn't on the injury report for the Cleveland Cavaliers come tomorrow afternoon for the night game, 7 o'clock. But we'll have to wait and see to find out. So, with all that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs insider and interact with Chris, me, and Jimmy by subscribing to Subtext. Sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word STOP. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, and Jimmy. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.